The Biden campaign pushed to jumpstart interest in the race by making this debate earlier. And we can tell you tonight a huge 73% of voters say they are planning to watch tonight. And you can too. Nicole just mentioned this debate airs right here on MSNBC in about 3 hours, with Rachel Maddow leading the special coverage in under an hour. I can also tell you this is the first debate between a president and a former president. Kind of an interesting factoid there. It's also the first time these two have been near each other at all since their last debate. Remember, Donald Trump broke tradition. He skipped the swearing in of President Biden after Donald Trump had failed to overthrow his own loss. This is also the first time either candidate has debated in any forum in 4 years. Neither did any primary debates this cycle. So there are a lot of ways that this is even higher stakes than it would already be. Now, that last debate was intense, heated, important. Many viewed it as one of the turning points that favored Joe Biden's eventual win.
We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming.
He blew it.
Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job.
One of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history.
I am the least racist person in this room.
The president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is all
You don't know it's
begun.
on the ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is it on the ballot? It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the court.
I don't think so.
In the court. Well,
there's nothing happening there.
That's how it went down. Now, turning to today, we can tell you Trump arrived in Georgia just in the last hour. And Biden here, you can see, touching down, he's hugging Stacey Abrams there, a big star in that state of Georgia. And she is part of our special coverage tonight. She joins me live tonight in a few minutes. Now, the other differences from past years, under the rules negotiated partly to deal with what you just heard, Donald Trump's incessant interruptions and his breaches of decorum, tonight mics will be muted during the other candidates' answer time, and there's no audience at all. So tonight matters. In a political world where people sometimes seem to disagree on literally everything, including the facts themselves, both campaigns agree that tonight is big. Nobody's pretending otherwise. And Biden's fans and the MAGA crowd both have seen how the past debates shaped the race between these two people. So you know how they debate, you know it's the same two people, and you know they have a big debate tonight that could matter. Indeed, there are people who remember how an often underestimated Joe Biden used a pretty sturdy performance in that debate to cast Donald Trump as basically unhinged and in over his head. And we all remember what happened after that. Something rare, an incumbent president lost an election by several states. Now, if campaigns are largely about storytelling, the candidate's origin story and why he or she's right for the job now, the story of our nation, what we've been through, where we're at, where we should be going, well, debate night, I would argue to you, is a little different. And I really mean this. Debates are more like a rap battle between the two MCs, where the words matter, the attacks are high stakes because everybody's listening. And even if you think, well, we kind of knew there were going to be attacks, and I knew you'd say that about me or my family or what I did wrong or any mistake I've ever made, the right words can still change everything. That's true in a debate or a rap battle. Just ask Dan Quayle, who was dunked on so memorably in a single debate and not only hurt his campaign, it defined his career for years. Just ask Trump, who, as I remind you, went from incumbent president to defeated January 6th agitator after his debates with Biden. Or just ask Drake, the most popular MC in the world until a recent rap battle debate redefined him for many. So Biden is sometimes underestimated and he has sometimes stumbled. But of all these attacks that he's faced this year, tonight he may have to channel both the president in him and the bruising, brawling candidate in him, and maybe a little bit of Eminem in his famous 8 Mile rap battle. Standing tall until he's outie and telling Trump, go ahead, tell these people something they don't know about me. With that, we are joined by Reverend Al Sharpton, who knows his way around politics, debates himself. He's been on that stage and music, host of the National Action Network, And Alex Wagner, host of Alex Wagner Tonight, who I'm thrilled to say is on the ground keeping an eye on everything for us, as she'll be doing all evening with our special coverage live from Atlanta. Alex, I go to you first. You can comment on the past debates, on the rap battle of it all, or just tell us what you're seeing on the ground.
I don't know. Am I allowed to comment on the rap battle of it all when you're in the same room with? Well, you're not in the same room, so on the same program, maybe I can. I don't know that we're going to get Eminem style like 16 bars from Joe Biden, but the sense that I get from Biden surrogates and people in Atlanta tonight is there's a degree of confidence about Joe Biden's ability to show up. I think there's a degree of trepidation around the X factors, which is, I think, to some degree natural. One of those being the cut mics. You know, on one hand, the cut mics are useful if you actually want to get a point across. On the other hand, the Donald Trump of it all is muted, makes Joe Biden's job just a little bit harder because the American public is not privy to his interruptions and general insanity, right? That's something that I think the Biden campaign wants to underscore tonight, just how unreliable and chaotic Donald Trump is. And with a muted mic, that becomes a little harder. The other piece of it is Donald Trump can still talk and Joe Biden can still hear him. We won't hear Donald Trump talking, but Joe Biden will if the mic is on mute. And so is that going to throw Joe Biden off his game? That's an X factor that nobody can know until the debate unfolds. But the other piece of it is, you know, you said this at the top of the show, Ari, this matters. And I think everybody recognizes that as such. And to some degree, as John Heilman was saying in the previous hour with Nicole, I think the general standards in the way we judge debates and we sort of do the post-game analysis, all of that is different now, not just because the stakes are so high, but because this could be the only debate that we have. This could be the only moment the American public, Earth 1 and Earth 2, watch both of these men on stage talk about the essential issues ahead of us.
Rev?
I think that it is very true that this is the first time in history we're having two presidents debate, a former president. It's also the first time in history we're having one of them as a 34 convicted felon. And I don't care what preparation they've given Trump. If President Biden is able to interject that I am talking to a man whose parole officer had to be informed he was going to Atlanta, I think these are the kinds of things that will provoke Trump to get off his game plan. Everyone's saying he may be cool. He may be cool unless he's jabbed with the right things that he's sensitive about. Because let's not forget, in 2 weeks, he's going to be sentenced. So if I was Joe Biden, I would compare, and I've been on the stage, we did 23 presidential Democratic primary debates. When those Craig lights go on you, everybody that briefed you is in the it's you and the people you're running against. And when Joe Biden is looking at this guy, he has got to say, this guy is not qualified to be president. From what I did as senator to vice president that helped recover the country to what I've done now, these are the facts. His facts is he was a businessman who filed bankruptcy 4 or 5 times, failed in certain other endeavors, and went on to be president and mismanaged COVID-19 that brought us in one of the worst economic down spiral that we've seen that I've been able again. So I've helped recover the country twice. Once as vice president under Obama, after Bush's debacle, and I had to come behind Trump's debacle. Who do you want as president?
It's almost like Rev has done this before.
Once or twice.
I want to show something to both of you and our audience here. This is a graphic of all the debates Joe Biden has done. It's actually quite remarkable. He's debated on the national stage more than any other living candidate. Here was the memorable debate he had with Palin.
Nice to meet you. Hey, can I call you Joe? Okay, good.
Look, the people in my neighborhood, they get it. They get it, and they know they've been getting the short end of the stick.
Joe Six-Pack, hockey moms across the nation.
The middle class has gotten the short end. The wealthy have done very well. Corporate America has been rewarded. It's time we change it. Barack Obama will change it.
Governor. Say it ain't so, Joe. There you go again. I think that's why we need to send the maverick from the Senate and put him in the White House.
So you're going to have to replace a $12,000 plan with a $5,000 check you've just given to the insurance company. I call that the ultimate bridge to nowhere.
Was it a simpler time, Alex? I don't know. I'll let the public judge. But people felt then he did well and that Palin, like Trump, was a challenging foe. Your thoughts?
Well, look, I mean, I think the contours of that debate were markedly different than the ones today. I mean, Joe Biden is, yes, of course, going to be battling Donald Trump, but he's also going to be battling, as Dan Pfeiffer says, a caricature of himself as an enfeebled old man who has no business running the country. That is not something he had to contend with when he battled Sarah Palin, right? There were gender dynamics on display there, but it was also fundamentally about Barack Obama. In that clip, that's who he was talking about. Joe Biden wasn't making the case for himself to be president. He was making the case as the president's wingman, and I think that the stakes are necessarily a lot lower in that event. I think it's as much what Joe Biden says tonight as how he delivers it and what he needs to give the American public and the skeptical voters who still don't know who they want to pull the lever for in November is a sense of confidence. It's just a sort of the tenor of what needs to happen tonight and inevitably what will happen tonight. The emotional tenor of it is so different than it was in 2008. It's almost an apples to orange comparison.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.